He said he was moving equipment before a storm. One day later, he was gone, and nothing at the scene made sense. In May 2022, 19-year-old Dylan Rounds was living out his dream. He was a young farmer on a remote plot of land near Lucin, Utah, working his full first season as a grain farmer. Lucin is a tiny, isolated spot, miles and miles from any major town. On the evening of May 28, 2022, Dylan called his grandmother, who was a significant person in his life. He told her he had just finished the hard work of taking his grain truck inside. He wanted to make sure it was protected before the rainstorm that was headed his way. That was the last confirmed time anyone heard his voice. When his mother and stepfather drove to the farm the very next day, the scene was chillingly quiet. The trailer looked untouched, but something was very wrong. Dylan's pickup truck was found, but it looked strangely clean, almost like it had been freshly pressure washed. In the dusty, middle-of-nowhere desert, this detail made absolutely no sense. The truck's key fob was gone, and Dylan's phone and wallet were gone too. His family immediately knew this wasn't a young man who just walked off. The scene felt staged, or, at the very least, violently disrupted. But the strangest clue wasn't just his truck. It was what searchers found in the dirt nearby. His boots were found tossed in the dirt. One had blood on it, and it didn't belong to Dylan. As searchers began to look at the vast, open land around Dylan's farm, they made a shocking discovery. A pair of his own work boots, tossed carelessly into the dirt close to his trailer. One of the boots had a distinct spot of blood on it. When the blood was tested, it was confirmed. It did not belong to Dylan Rounds. This discovery was a gut punch for his family and immediately shifted the case from a simple missing person report to a suspected crime. The clues at the scene only deepened the mystery. There were absolutely no tracks or footprints leading away from the trailer. In the open desert, a walk-off would have left a clear trail. There were no signs of a struggle or scuffle at the property itself. The farmland around him was wide open desert for miles. It's a place where it would be almost impossible to hide any major evidence without leaving some kind of trace. These disturbing details pushed Dylan's case into the national spotlight. The narrative of the hard-working young farmer vanishing without a trace in a remote area captivated and horrified the public. And then detectives found a man who had been hanging around Dylan's property. He lived in a shack nearby. He had a violent history, and Dylan's items were found inside his trailer. Detectives soon focused on a man named James Brenner. Brenner was 60 years old and had a long, concerning record of violent crime. Crucially, he had been squatting illegally on a piece of land very close to Dylan's farm. The isolation of Lucin, Utah meant that anyone in the vicinity would stick out, and Brenner was known to be in the area around the time Dylan disappeared. Investigators soon gathered compelling evidence tying Brenner to the scene and potentially to Dylan's disappearance. The blood-stained boot found in the desert was analyzed, and investigators discovered Brenner's DNA mixed with the unknown blood spot on the footwear. They retrieved Dylan's phone data, which showed digital information placing Brenner near the scene around the time Dylan vanished. When authorities searched Brenner's trailer, they found more digital information and items tying him to the crime. By the summer of 2023, authorities were confident they knew what happened. James Brenner was officially charged with aggravated murder and evidence tampering in the death of Dylan Rounds. Still, there was no body, and the desert had swallowed every clue until 2024. It took nearly 2 years, but the desert finally gave something back. For nearly 2 years after James Brenner was charged, one agonizing piece of the puzzle was still missing: Dylan's body. The vast, exposed landscape of the Utah-Nevada border had held its secret, leaving Dylan's family without closure. Then, on April 9, 2024, the Box Elder County Sheriff's Office announced a massive breakthrough. Working off a new lead, authorities had located human remains in the remote area near the Nevada-Utah border. In July 2024, the identity was tragically confirmed. The remains belonged to Dylan Rounds. The confirmation brought a painful finality to the case. While the exact cause of death has not been released publicly, the discovery cemented the initial charges. Brenner remains the prime suspect and is currently facing trial for Dylan's murder. The remains were found about 7 miles west of where Dylan had last been seen. For the first time, his family could begin the process of bringing him home. But the evidence recovered and the missing details still leave some major questions. The evidence tells a different story, but not the full one. While James Brenner is in custody and Dylan's remains have been recovered, several major questions about the night of May 28, 2022 still haunt investigators and the public. The evidence recovered tells a story of violence, but the full picture remains elusive. Why was Dylan's pickup truck found pressure washed? Was this Brenner's attempt to destroy forensic evidence? If so, why was it done at the remote farm and not somewhere else? Where's the missing key fob? This small item could be a critical piece of evidence about how the crime scene was left. What exactly happened between Dylan's last phone call to his grandmother and the moment he disappeared? Was he ambushed? Was there a confrontation? How did Brenner manage to hide Dylan's remains for nearly 2 years in such an open, vast, but exposed landscape? The final location was remote, but the ability to move a body and conceal it effectively in that type of environment speaks to a certain level of planning or opportunity. The evidence points strongly to Brenner as the killer, but the motive for the crime remains vague. Did the men know each other well? Was this a random act, or did they have a conflict? Even with charges filed and Dylan finally brought home, the timeline of his final hours and the precise details of his murder are not yet completely understood. Dylan's case shook people because it felt impossible. A young farmer vanishes in the open desert, leaving almost no trace. The vastness of the American West often features in missing person cases, but in this instance, the truth was far darker, and the danger was much more than anyone expected. It serves as a stark reminder that even in the most isolated places, you can't truly be alone. Let me know your thoughts on this case, and if you want more deep breakdowns like this, press the like button and consider subscribing. Thank you all for watching.